Warning and alert, my friends. Today's episode will elevate your levels of anger and frustration. If you don't have patience and endurance, watch the episode until the end. But believe me, you will enjoy it and dive into events that I personally never expected to be real till I verified the sources multiple times and was shocked. Today, my friend, you will listen to the strongest and smartest escape story you've ever heard in your life. I share genuine stories, so if you enjoy this type of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. You are with the Ripper. Our tale started in 1973, specifically in Cape Town, South Africa. Before we begin, let's take a quick look at what was going on in South Africa throughout the 1970s, notably in Cape Town. Apartheid was the name given to Cape Town's governance system. If you ask me what this word means, I will tell you that apartheid is a racial segregation system that divided South African society into two parts: white Europeans, who were a small minority, and black people. Africans were the majority and original occupants of the area, while a white European minority colonized South Africa and viewed themselves as superior to the natives. They used oppression and injustice against them. According to their reasoning, the purpose of this system was to ensure the state's political and economic progress. They believed that giving Africans authority over the state would lead to the demise of their country, economic collapse, and the destruction of the entire nation. They rationalized this by stating that Europeans were racially superior due to their great intelligence and were therefore the only ones capable of governing and enacting laws. According to them, and with these arguments, a variety of harsh legislation were created in South Africa. The first was the ban on marriage between white Europeans and other ethnic groupings. Even clandestine and unlawful partnerships were outlawed by law, which meant that no white person could marry an African or Asian, nor could they participate in forbidden behaviors with them. It is basically banned in religious terms, but they have no religion. The second repressive regulation prohibits black people from managing enterprises or investing unless they get an administration license. But who exactly makes up the administration? The white race. Consider this scenario. You're sitting in your home when a guest approaches you. In addition, a guest enters your home without permission, sets the rules, and imposes their system on you. What would be your reaction? You would probably exclaim, "What a lack of shame! What a lack of manners!" In fact, they were really nasty and shameless. They possessed an elitist worldview. Even in children's cartoons, the blonde was shown as the intellectual heroic savior, and the dark-skinned figure was the barbarian who couldn't control their emotions or accomplish anything. You have the ideal example in the movie Pocahontas, which we all used to watch and enjoy, seeing how they categorized themselves as heroes and dealt with savages in order to elevate other races. By the way, their point of view is not limited to black people, rather it includes their perception of us, whether Arabs or Asians, is that anyone who is not European and has no link to the white European race is less intellectual and evolved. They regard us as a shame to the world and a burden upon it. The third unfair decision concerned hospitals, markets, and everything else. They split everything among themselves. Even residential communities were divided into sections for blacks and whites. White hospitals were outfitted with cutting-edge technology and instruments, but black hospitals were in disarray, to say the least. and resembled animal hospitals. Of course, blacks were not permitted to enter white districts unless they were employed as domestic servants. Even when working as domestics, they were kept in fully segregated quarters away from their home. They never let him inside the home, not even for their dogs, and their dogs sit with them in the house, but a person like him, only with a little more melanin, can't sit in the same chair with me, next to me on the sofa, or even in the same room as me. It's impossible for him to touch anything I have touched, and I don't want him to breathe the air I do. Of course, I apologize and am compelled to communicate this message to you in this manner in order to give you an idea of the entire episode and to help you comprehend how terrible the future events will be. To elaborate, the position in the South African administration, which is composed of European whites, was such that they used to prohibit legally white doctors did not treat black individuals. They would not treat a black guy even if he was dying in front of you and need medication that you had in your pocket. My buddy, throw the medication on the ground and tread on it with your foot. Do not give it to the black person. Of course, this is based on their twisted reasoning. These are the folks that profess fake humanism, human rights, and are openly hypocritical. Most of you have now learned a small portion, if not all, of what was going on in South Africa at the time. Let us now discuss the incidents described in the video's title. Of course, black people were dissatisfied with these unfair laws which insulted and humiliated them, so they decided to go outside and do something. Demonstrations against the European government were held often, but the police beat them and subjected them to the most severe types of torture. If they didn't capture and imprison the majority of them, they'd keep them there for years, if not life, without trial on the grounds of treason. Some white folks sympathized with blacks who were seeking their rights, but the police would lash them in the streets, and the beatings often resulted in death. Among these residents were two white guys, Ted Jenkins and Stephen Lee. These two were diametrically opposite. There was racial discrimination against black people, and they were demanding equality among themselves. But Ted and Stephen, along with their families and relatives, felt no injustice toward black people at all. They believed that black people deserved this treatment, and that it was perfectly normal because we were of European descent from a higher class. We were rich, and they weren't. In short, they didn't care what happened to them, whether it was their families or their friends or those two white men, as long as they lived on land, houses, properties, businesses, and assets, and lived a beautiful life. So, the motivation for this and what excited him was that he wanted equality for his girlfriend, whom he had met secretly because she was African. They loved each other very much, but their marriage or relationship was completely against the laws of the time. So Ted made a serious decision to fight his country's oppressive laws for the love of his life. He asked his friend Stephen for help, asking him for support. He said, "Please, Stephen, support me in this. I'll do anything. All I want is your support." Stephen replied, "Sure, my friend. No one will support you as a man. I'm with you." As the days passed, Ted thought of a plan to raise awareness in white communities about supporting black people in their protests. He came up with the idea of designing leaflets and distributing them to citizens without the police knowing. If the police discovered them distributing leaflets, they would surely be arrested. How could Ted do this without being seen by the police, complained about, or incited by the government, Ted thought, and created a homemade bomb that was remotely operated by vibrations. He began working on it with several attempts and experiments, and finally, the bomb was successful and ready. At that time, he decided to follow the protests with his friend Daphne, asking her to take photos of police assaults on black people and send them to him. Indeed, she sent him photos of a police officer torturing a black citizen, his blood in the street, his fainting, or other damage. After finishing printing these leaflets, he placed them in a bag holding a grenade, then took the bag and put it in the trash. Then, from afar, with the push of a button, the bomb inside the basket exploded, and here began the chaos. The leaflets spread everywhere with the sound of the explosion from inside the basket. People were curious to know what this paper that was flying everywhere was. They began collecting them to read them and find out what was happening, only to be shocked to find out that they were leaflets supported by photos and death reports of what the government was doing to the black citizen. Of course, the plan worked, and Ted and Stephen became. They repeat this plan daily in different areas, each time at a new trash bin, each time in a neighborhood, each time in an alley, each time everywhere in Cape Town. Here, the white community began to understand what was happening, and the spark of anger, demands for equality, and support for the black cause started. The police felt that there was someone behind this, and that they needed to arrest him before the situation escalated and protests broke out. Indeed, the police had a very clever plan. They placed surveillance cameras next to every trash bin in their most famous areas. Within a week, the camera captured a video of him putting a bag in the trash, after which it exploded and the posts spread. So they said, the police, meaning in the end, it turned out that the root of all these troubles was one of us. His identity was determined, and they raided his house and arrested him. Ted, who was arrested and taken to prison, had his girlfriend, Daphne, who was black, come to visit him. Every time she would reassure him, sit and cry, and promise him that she would never leave him. Without the guards noticing, she would take money out of her bag and hide it inside Ted's shoes so he could manage inside the prison. Days passed, and the moment of Ted's sentencing came. The police took him to the court, and when he saw the judge, all of Ted's file papers were reviewed, and he was sentenced to 12 years in prison without reduction. The verdict was final, with no possibility of appeal, meaning it was an enforceable decision because he tried to incite riots and incite the government. As for his friend Stephen, he was sentenced to 8 years for aiding Ted. Daphne was in the courtroom when she heard the verdict. She completely broke down in tears because what was happening was pure injustice upon injustice. Ted looked at her from afar, but he couldn't do anything. He didn't want to involve her or clarify to the police or the court that there was a relationship between him and Daphne, so she wouldn't also end up in trouble. The police took Ted in a transport vehicle with the other prisoners to a prison outside the city called Bravery prison. It was the largest prison in South Africa, mostly filled with first-degree prisoners, those guilty of serious crimes like murder. Ted arrived at the prison, handcuffed and shackled, and noticed that the security was extremely tight. Each door opened into another, leading to the cell. Each prisoner was kept in solitary confinement. They placed Stephen in one cell and Ted in the adjacent one. After a short while, they brought the prisoners out to eat together. Ted sat next to a man named Dennis. Dennis had been in prison for many years, understood the system, and knew everything about the prison's ins and outs. He started asking Ted, "You look new here. What did you do? Why were you brought here?" At first, Ted wasn't interested in Dennis, but Dennis, being naturally sociable, managed to open several topics with Ted. He said, "Listen, my friend, I advise you to stay away from those wearing blue because they are the criminals who were arrested for murder or assault. Stick to dealing with those who wear your color because they all have political cases." So Ted felt more at ease with Dennis and started asking and inquiring about the prison system, its exits, its entrances, when the breaks are, when they go outside, when they eat. Dennis was responding and explaining everything. Ted's friend, Stephen, came to join them, and the three of them became a group, Ted and Stephen, who are the companions, and their new friend, Dennis, whom they met in prison. Stephen said to Dennis, "We are not willing to stay in this prison for this long. This is a 12-year sentence, and I have an 8-year sentence. It's impossible for us to serve this entire time in prison. We need to make a plan to escape." Then Dennis, who has experience, told him, "Man, where are you going to escape, my dear? You are in the biggest prison in South Africa. Just thinking about escaping will get you caught, and your sentence will be doubled. Imagine being in prison for 12 years. It will become 24 years just for trying to escape." Ted then said to Dennis, "Okay, I have money and I want to hide it because if there is a surprise inspection by the guards and they find the money, they will confiscate it all. So, what is the way to hide this money?" Dennis said to him, "Okay, give me the money you have. I'll hide it inside the toothpaste. When you need it, I'll give it to you." At that moment, they heard a very loud scream from the place they were in. A black man was lying on the ground, and the officer was kicking him until he bit the ground. Dennis turned to them and said, "Oh, it's normal. This scene is very normal. We're used to seeing their treatment of Africans in prison, so don't worry. You'll get used to it over time." After that, they returned them again, each to their cell in the prison's outer yard. Of course, they took them out to the outer yard so that the prisoners can release their energy and exercise so that they don't bottle up all this energy and end up fighting each other during meals or at breakfast or lunchtime. The important thing in all this is that Ted, along with his friend Stephen and their third companion Dennis, started walking in the outer yard and playing boxing with the prisoners, playing soccer, playing basketball, and lifting weights. Dennis pointed to them and said, "Do you see this wall around you, around the prison? It's 7 meters high and has barbed wire on top. Along every wall there are snipers to guard the prison. These snipers will not hesitate to open fire on us if they sense that we are trying to escape. They have orders to shoot you if you get close to the wall, without any warning or question. So, if you want my advice, finish your sentence that you came for, and if you get sentenced, don't gamble with your life. You came with 12 years, spent it quietly, and you came with 8 years, spent it quietly. Otherwise, you're playing with your life." After that, Dennis left them and returned to his cell. There was a prisoner next to them who smoked all the time and was eavesdropping, meaning he was putting his ear to the door like a guest. As soon as Dennis went back to his cell, he came to Ted and Stephen, and without any preamble, he said to them, "Surely Dennis is trying to discourage you and scare you about prison. You're like any new prisoner. Anyone who enters prison is new, and Dennis interacts with him and keeps discouraging him from the idea of escaping. But if you want my advice, don't listen to him. Welcome. My name is Leonardo, and if you have a clever escape plan, consider me with you from today." Of course, they didn't notice the time until the guard's voice called them, "Come on." Naturally, it was all curses and insults. He told them, "Time's up, everyone back to your cells." And indeed, everyone returned to their cells. The next day during lunch, Ted took the money his girlfriend had given him and looked around left and right to see if any guards were watching. As soon as he saw the police busy torturing and beating the black prisoners, Ted quickly took out the money and handed it to Dennis, saying, "Take it, hide it, hide it." Dennis then put it away. He put the money inside an empty toothpaste tube. Of course, an empty toothpaste tube. Then he placed the toothpaste on top of the money and arranged it in a very professional manner, so no one would ever imagine that there was money inside the toothpaste tube, because even if someone used it, it would still come out as toothpaste. Then he gave Dennis the money and the toothpaste, and Ted started thinking of an escape plan. Every time he thought of a plan, he found 1,000 obstacles, and it might fail. A day passed, then 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, until a whole month passed in prison. Suddenly, while he was sitting in his cell, he found a crazy and brilliant plan. Ted remembered that he had a pen and paper, so he took them while everyone was asleep and started. He takes the measurements of the cell door opening, and indeed memorizes the measurements. The next morning, when the prisoners were showering, of course, they were all in one bathroom. Leonardo, the one you know, that guy with the mustache, came to Stephen and said, "Guys, I found a brilliant idea." He told them the story and explained the idea in detail, that he would make a wooden key with measurements identical to the guards. Leonardo then said, "Man, you call this a brilliant idea, and you found the solution, and you made us focus and get excited. In the end, this is what you came up with. You want to make a copy of the cell keys. I mean, the matter is difficult. How are you? You will do it. And basically, the wood, my ambitious friend, will break if you put it inside the cell door lock. The most important question here is, where will you find the wood?" He told him, "It's a simple task, God willing. We will get the wood from the workshops in the prison, because in prison they make the inmates work hard tasks like cutting wood, carving, or doing any craft." Ted continued his speech and plan, saying to Leonardo, "As for the key, I will make it with high professionalism so it won't break. Just give me a little trust. Here." Leonardo felt that Ted was serious, so he told him, "Okay, we are with you." After that, they went to the lunch yard and decided to stage a simple act there while they were eating. Ted pushed Leonardo his lunch tray, and he started shouting and threatening Stephen. He said, "I swear, if I catch you, you son of a..." He started causing trouble for Stephen. Of course, all of this was just a staged scene to distract the guards. Then Stephen responded with insults, and they started fighting. Suddenly, the guard came and said, "If I catch you fighting again, I'll beat you one by one and make you eat dirt. Of course, he didn't beat them directly because they were all white, but if they were black, he would have shown no mercy. Then Ted, while he was arguing with the guard and trying to separate them, focused his attention on the keys that the guard had, who was busy separating Stephen and Leonardo. So Ted did this every day. He tries to focus on the shape of the keys with the guard and draws a small, precise part of them every day. He doesn't draw a complete key. Instead, he draws a step every day, a step every day, a step every day. He might count this step for more than one day to focus on whether it's correct or not. So he worked very meticulously, day after day, week after week, until he was able to draw all the keys with the guard. A month passed, and then they entered the workshop. The prisoners were all focused on their work. Ted took pieces of wood along with wood glue and quickly placed them in a plastic container. This container was with each prisoner. Ted, being clever, placed a piece of cloth inside this container so that the wood and other tools would be inside. The one who took it from the workshop, when he moves it and walks, it doesn't make a sound, it doesn't make a noise, and then it gets stuck. The one he took from the workshop, when he moves it and walks, it doesn't make a sound, it doesn't make a noise, and then it gets discovered. So when the guard came to tell them to move to the cells, Ted signaled to Stephen, telling him to make a noise, to create a distraction. Stephen, who had a big box of nails next to him, pushed it to the ground, causing all the nails to scatter on the floor to draw the guard's attention away from Ted. At that time, Ted started shaking the box that was with the plastic to see if it made a sound or not, testing the things he had stolen from the workshop. The situation was safe. Then he signaled to Stephen that it was safe, and they left the workshop and went to the prison. Ted started taking the wood and smoothing it with the file he had stolen from their workshop, using the same design he had until he finished all the keys. He began testing the key on his cell, and the surprise was that the key matched the lock perfectly, and the cell opened. But there was a problem. The cell itself was designed with an inner door and an outer door. Ted was able to open the inner door, but no one could open the outer door from the inside. The door could only be opened from the outside, and the key had to be outside to open the door. The next day, Ted met with his friends, Stephen and Leonardo, and told them, "Guys, I have good news. I was able to open the first door." They were overjoyed. Leonardo said to him, "Well, since the idea worked, try to make the key for the outer door outside." After a while, Ted indeed started making the key for the outer door and was waiting for the right opportunity to test it. After a month and a half, the promised day came, the day the prisoners were ordered to clean the outside of the prison, meaning they had to clean the corridors. This was the right opportunity for Ted, so he asked Leonardo to guard the entrance where the guards come from and give him a signal if anyone came. Ted indeed sat trying to open the outer door with a wooden key and succeeded, but when he tried to pull out the key, it got stuck in the lock. At that moment, Leonardo gave Ted a signal. The guards. A guard came, a guard. Here Ted was trying to get the key out but couldn't. With a strong effort, the key broke inside the lock. He kept trying to get the remaining part of the key stuck in the lock. Once, twice, 3 times. And the guard was getting closer, his footsteps starting to be heard. His friend was silent, unable to say anything because the guard had come close to his friend. Leonardo who was watching the guards. Finally, he succeeded and got the remaining part of the key out of the lock, and the guard didn't notice. But there was a new problem. The tongue of the door lock had come out, which meant the door was locked but open. And then the key broke, so he sat there, hitting the lock tongue to make it go in, but he couldn't, because if the guard saw it, he would consider it an escape attempt and double the sentence. He tried several times before the guard came, but he couldn't at all until it was time to sleep. Every prisoner entered his cell after cleaning it, and the guard, while checking on the prisoners, noticed that the outer door of Ted's cell was open and the lock tongue was out. But this guard was foolish, so he thought to himself, okay, maybe the guard before me left the door open, so it might not be fully closed. He didn't notice that it wasn't completely locked and left the place, and this incident passed without any issues. Ted sat down to make keys out of wood. The method was repeated until he was able to make them all, except for the key to the outer door. Ted met with Stephen and Leonardo and told them that this was their only problem, the outer door. An idea came to Stephen when he spotted a broom inside the cell. He took it and started measuring the distance between the broom and the outer lock key. But Ted had to make a manual device to control the broom remotely. So they went to the workshop again, and Ted started making a movable wooden piece to take with him to the prison. When night came, Ted sat and watched, making sure no guards were present. He took the movable wooden piece he had made, put the key in it, and extended his hand from the cell window or the cell door window. He passed the moving wooden piece from outside and was trying to open the door with the moving device he made, but suddenly the key fell to the ground. When the key fell, Ted felt the danger, because if the guards saw a wooden key, the matter would end there, since it would be a clear escape attempt. By coincidence, Ted had chewing gum, and he stuck it to the wooden device and took it towards the key until, with force, the key stuck to this device and he pulled the key towards him. The next day, while they were having breakfast in the prison's inner courtyard, Ted told the prisoners that his plan had succeeded and they had a chance to escape from the prison. Of course, they all had fun, but Dennis said, "Listen, man, if you want me to help you, I'm ready, but I can't make that sacrifice and run away." So Ted went aside and asked the inmate responsible for cleaning in the prison not to throw away the clothes inside the containers. The new inmates would throw away the clothes they came in and change into prison clothes. Ted's plan was that when they escaped, they would wear these clothes under the prison clothes, so that when they escaped, they would take off the prison clothes, and it would be as if they were never imprisoned. And indeed, they collected clothes from the trash and got ready to test their plan. At night, since there was no one around and all the guards were asleep, he opened the inner cell door with the wooden key and the outer door, then went to his friend Leonardo. They tried to open the remaining doors until they spotted the shadow of a guard approaching them from outside. They quickly hid in a locker under one of the corridors. After the guard left, they returned to the cell with the keys and hid them in various places in the prison, far from their rooms, so that if there was a surprise inspection, no one would suspect them. They also buried some keys in the outer yard where they trained. Every time, he and Leonardo would try to make more keys, testing them on the rest. The cells, after that, Ted talked to Dennis and said, "Listen, I managed to make 39 keys for 39 cells and tested them. So this is your chance. If you want me to design a key for your cell, I'm ready." Dennis replied, "No, honestly, I'm sticking to my position. I'm getting old and my sentence is almost over, so I don't want to take the risk of escaping after all these years I've lived here. I mean, I only have a little time left before I get out. If I get caught, my sentence will double. But anyway, I wish you good luck and I'll help you as much as I can." Of course, they were surprised when the guards suddenly gathered in the prison for an unexpected inspection. Ted was worried about the money that was in the toothpaste. When he returned to his room after the inspection, he found that the toothpaste was thrown away. On the ground, no one knew. No one had any idea that there was money in the paste in the first place. The critical moment came, and at night they prepared to execute their escape plan. They opened their 3 cells, left their prison clothes on the bed, covered it with a blanket, and quickly exited through the outer door. But just then, they heard the sound of the guards' footsteps. In an unexpected move to save them, Dennis broke the light in his cell. Their friend, who had told them, "I can't go, honestly, because I have a little time left," exited. When he saw they were in trouble, he broke the light in his cell to distract the guard. He started calling out, "Hey guard, come here. The cell is dark. The light is broken," to get him to come help. When the guard got distracted, the guard and Dennis started opening all the doors in front of them, and only the last door remained. They were very happy and excited that they were finally getting their freedom. Ted began to pull out the keys, one after the other, until he reached the last key. He tried them all, and when he reached the last key, he started inserting it into the lock, but the surprise was that none of the keys opened the last door. Imagine, after all this effort, they would stay in prison, and their sentence would be extended after everything they had planned, done, and executed. Then Ted said to them, "Okay guys, there's no solution. Let's quickly return to the cell before they discover our plan." But Leonardo said, "No way, I'm not going back. I reached the last key." The door to freedom was finally open, and he thought to himself, "No way I'm going back." He had a screwdriver with him, so he started hitting the lock and the latch. He was hitting the lock with a metal screwdriver, hitting it with all his might, afraid someone would hear the loud banging. Suddenly, Leonardo managed to break the door, and the last door opened. They were overjoyed, hardly believing it. They quickly escaped from the prison, changed into ordinary clothes, and looked around the courtyard, scanning left and right to spot the snipers on the wall. They were watching the snipers with a small mirror, waiting for the snipers to move to the other side. They really escaped from the prison, and no one could recognize them because they were in casual clothes, and went to the parking lot where they found a taxi driver. He was a black man who was surprised to see white-skinned people getting into his taxi, as it was forbidden by law. He was scared of them, thinking they might have bad intentions, but they tried to gain his trust, and after some hesitation, he decided to take them to their city. They were very happy, and their joy was not dependent on the oppressive regime, as they had gained their freedom. Finally, the 3 of them escaped across the border to Mozambique, then to Tanzania, and from there to London. After that, they continued their struggle against the apartheid laws in South Africa until the revolution succeeded and the regime fell. the European system in South Africa, and the appointment of the President of African descent, Nelson, who was the President of South Africa in 1994. And so, folks, after these very deep events and details, the strongest true story of an escape from prison has ended. By the way, a full movie was made about it called Escape from Pretoria. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and don't forget to subscribe. And so, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on notifications. Title, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on notifications.